Snake and Banter is brought to you by eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix, and they are still running their classic first-time deposit bonus of 50% on up to 200 USDT using our referral link in the description box below. Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Obviously, Maui's back from the major. Turned out big. Actually, isn't. One of the best teams of all time. Joke is actually, by the way, that came along as such a hot take ages ago, but it's actually aged very well. Like, I've got to say, if you look at whenever Big doesn't have their real lineup, they're actually way better than they should be. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Some of the maps they win on, they can win on maps for like a 30% win rate with a standard or something. So they must be doing something. But anyway, the point I was going to get to was, obviously, Maui's had a really hard few weeks, not just working the major, but having to, like, it's almost like living under a totalitarian regime. He couldn't even think the thoughts that would get you in trouble while at that event. He had to just get into a whole new ideology, worldview, like whatever. So it's okay. You're back now. It's safe though. It's safe. Except they're going back next year, Maui. So don't get too reckless. Now you've got to live like that forever, mate. Exactly. You thought it was just 3 weeks.
His Gala's behind me.
Exactly.
Gala, where is he?
Listen, all I'm going to say is you will never understand them. You'll never understand. Here's the thing. That's one thing I think me and Brazilian fans can agree on. I don't think I will ever understand them. They'll never understand me.
Can't see eye to
there
eye.
you go. That could actually be the basis to build a whole fucking, I won't say a friendship, but some sort of like, middle ground, couldn't we? We could just say, yeah, we almost like we don't understand each other. We come from radically different backgrounds, and that's leading to miscommunication. I say miscommunication. I'm pretty sure when they tell me they want to kill me, they're actually communicating very, very specifically exactly what they're thinking. I'm just saying. So our guest for this episode is going to be JRT, who you might have seen if you saw ESL Challenger Rotterdam. Now, everyone's going to go, what? Who watches that? Well, then you're an ignorant idiot, aren't you? Because that was won by Outsiders, the best team in the world. So fucking level up, isn't it, fans? It's not my fault you don't watch the big tournaments like me and JRT here. By the way, brilliant piece of info that'll lead into when we start talking about Outsiders, by the way. This is how mad Outsiders has been underrated for the last 3 months. Even Maui in motherfucking ESL Rotterdam, I was getting them as a betting underdog in like all the playoff series. It's actually meant Leonardo, like, what? But that is the world we did live in, like right before this major. Obviously, also, people might have heard JRT was doing some commentary with, I think it was Eternal J and that on one of the Pro League seasons, right? Beginning of this year?
I did it with Darth Mike, actually. Yeah.
Darth Mike, there you go.
Yes.
And so basically he's been around the scene. We'll see how he does, right? So obviously we always Fight Club style make the guest start first, JRT. Not, you don't have to kill Mauisnake for my opinion. Whatever. That's just, a bonus if you do. But no, obviously we want you to start. So what's your good point? What are you bringing to the table? I've sort of set it up there.
Yeah, so I mean, my good point obviously is Outsiders getting that major title. I felt like, honestly, of all the teams that made it to the playoffs, they were one of the most consistent ones. If you look at their record throughout the major, in fact, it was 5 BO3s they played, didn't lose a single one, and only lost one map, and that was against Maus. So, and speaking of Maus, right, they played them, like you said, in ESL Challenger Rotterdam, and were victorious against them in the semifinals in the same kind of situation, and then went off to beat ENCE. So they got that warm-up already, and to be honest, I was kind of, underrating them as well. I wasn't expecting them to come out to win. I picked Maus to take it, but Outsiders seem to be the eternal underdog, and they really did pull it off in such a very big way at this major. And I'm happy for them. I think in terms of teams that they were up against, maybe they could have been tested a little bit better, but, at the end of the day, they did prove that they can stand with the best of them.
I'll focus on, I suppose, the players on Outsiders, because I like that a couple of them have found this sort of success. So, for example, Flit, I've been really high on this guy for a long time, especially when he was on Forza, because the way Jerry used to call around Flit was basically like a 4-1 style, where he just throw Flit on the other side of the map and just says, Flit, just do whatever you do, and he would be so good. Like, he's such a great lurker, but he's also on CT side so comfortable in basically every single situation that I've ever seen him in. So I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Dastan. I'm happy that this team was able to capture the trophy for just playing their style unapologetically. And I really think that with Outsiders, what's fun to think about for this team is kind of once teams start to get used to them playing like this, are they going to actually suffer at all? Is everybody eventually going to adapt to that style? Because I'd say that one thing that does help them is the fact that they do play a very unique style, and I think that when you load up into the server against them for the first time, you're probably a little bit more confused than you would be otherwise versus playing like, say, a MAUIS, for example, because they play a more, I think, a style that more European teams are used to. So I'm just curious how kind of the longevity, and is this going to be sustainable for Outsiders too?
Okay. By the way, we bounce around on the point, say JRT, so come back in if you have any other angle you want to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had another point and now I'm forgetting.
Sorry, look, we'll circle back around to it because like, I'll just pick up what Maui was talking about there. Like one thing I would say is I actually agree also generally with the point that once they made the playoffs, they actually, what's mad is one of the easiest teams to bet on. Like they actually look like pretty sturdy and they showed in the tournament. They don't break. Like they can lose, but they don't just bend over and get wrecked by people. And this whole major was basically teams just choking and fucking shitting the bed and underperforming. It's actually one of the only teams that overperformed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying, like they had that consistency, 3-1 in Challenger stage, 3-1 Legend stage. The only losses they had were in BO1s. So they won all their BO3s, like I said. So yeah, super consistent. And again, if you look at Outsiders 5 months ago, for example, everyone's saying, oh my God, I don't know if this team's going to be even around. And now, you know, they're here winning a major 5 months later, which is pretty impressive. And just a couple of changes to their roster, obviously Fame and Norbert being added from K23. Fame in particular, oh my goodness, like a lot of people were questioning whether he would make a good addition to this team, but I think he's proven that he's more than just a good addition. He has been amazing.
Yeah, I will also say as well, Maui, I agree on the flip point in the sense that, like, mate, this is how you know people don't watch Outsiders play and do not care about this team. No one even mentioned this guy's name. He just won a major. Like, go and look at the numbers he dropped, guys. Like, if you don't know, right, this is how insane this guy is, but how you know people just looking at the headlines or the HLTV scores. Because everyone congratulated Jame, because Jame is the whole fucking mascot of the team, isn't he? He's like the identity of Outsiders. Everyone congratulated Fame because he's the rookie and he's his first major and he's supposed to fail. People didn't even mention Flit, right? And I'm telling you, just go look, like, mate, in like the final, in like the quarters, this guy's just dropping like monster maps, like enormous series where you just do like, I'm talking guys, not just even frags, like he just does like the 100 ADR series, like a whole best of 3. And yeah, true, they didn't play the best teams in the world. That's obvious. That's probably the biggest flaw of this major, unfortunately, because of the brackets. But like, look at the work this guy did. Like the joke of this team, this is why actually to piggyback on what Maui said at the end there. Unfortunately, I don't think it's possible they can replicate any of this. One, you're not going to get these draws again in tournaments. Like, the idea that a major had a bracket like this, when you look at actually Outsiders run it, the joke is it looks like they're an ESL Challenger. It's like, this is the major. What? Like, it's not like they did beat Na'Vi or Vitality or whoever in the best of 3s. Unfortunately, they didn't. So first of all, I don't believe they can do it again. Then secondly, you just look at the numbers of the big 3 on their team, Jame, Flit and Fame. It's like, that's not going to happen. Come on, man. Like, come on. For a start off, Jame doesn't even put those numbers up normally. Like, Jame himself's he's more on like he's in the middle. To me, he's the problem child of the team. This tournament, he was just fired. Nothing wrong whatsoever. I mean, the joke is, half those 1v2s he did get forced into, so he couldn't save. So he did the old joke that I've always said, which is if he can't save, then he's actually really good. He actually sort of showed it in this tournament. So I have to say, personally, I don't look at it like, now they're number 1 and like, oh, what about the other teams? Like, I'll be shocked if this team can like maintain top 5. To me, they actually showed at this tournament why they're an awesome team to watch, because they're like the ultimate gatekeeper if your team isn't fucking insanely good at Counter-Strike. And by the way, even if you're insanely good, if you have any choke factor, they might get you there as well too. But the problem I have is if I put this team tomorrow, drop them into a tournament with like, so it could be like a Blast, they're going to be at Blast World Finals. If they have to play like full strength FaZe Clan, Na'Vi, throw in a couple more Vitality, like they're not even making the final, mate. Like, forget winning it, they're not making the final. Like, I'm going to be the hater now because that's how you're supposed to do it if you're an analyst, guys. Like, what I'm doing is selling high. Like, look, I'll take them in a bunch of underdog matches again. Brilliant team to take, but I think now people will probably go too far with it, mate. It reminds me of when Gambit won that major. Like, I know they immediately split up in terms of Zeus went home, but spoiler, if he just stayed, it wouldn't have been good. Like, they wouldn't have had like a load of big tournament trophy hauls, you know.
The biggest indictment on Outsiders' run at this major is that 4 of their BO3 victories are against 2 of the same teams. Like, it's just like they played MAUIS twice and they played Fnatic twice also. And you just have to think maybe that's just a good matchup for them because they have a very particular style. I think that overall they're I would probably like not sell them so low. Like, I would probably put them still as like a pretty I don't even think this is really a hot take. They're like easily to me a top 4 team.
Wait a minute. Here's the problem, Maui. You're exactly the person. Like, if I had an editor, I'd just go back now, wouldn't I? On the past episode of this show, you were saying about how Team Liquid was like a true favourite to win the fucking major. Homie, only one event happened. In the meantime, what happened? Have we gone through a fucking time stream or something? Suddenly Team Liquid had just chopped liver, in come Outsiders. Like, give me a break. You didn't even have them on that list before, so which is it? Come on.
Outsiders weren't in my elite. They were not in my elite category going into this major. That's for sure.
Are they now, though?
Sounds
like it, right? Sounds like you believe they have
to. They kind of have to be now, based off of the criteria I put Liquid in there on. So I would say that they are. But it's not like. I mean, when you really see like sustainability, or when you think about sustainability with teams in their win conditions and just the way that they play, like FaZe and Na'Vi makes sense, I think, based off of the years of Counter-Strike we've seen in the past. Like, but with Outsiders, it's tough to see. Can Norbert stay an elite anchor? Can Flit always be this great rotator player? Like, is he always going to make the right decisions? Actually, I think Flit's going to stay around, but I don't know if Norbert is, for example. Like, that's where I've been hammering Outsiders the hardest throughout this entire run, is that I think Norbert is like a flawed player. I don't think he's bad, but I think he's one that you have to cover up a lot with him, and I don't think that moving forward, like, if there's an eventual Cloud9 dispersion of players and they all just go to different teams, I think that they would benefit the most by getting someone from that team to substitute in for what Norbert is doing.
Sure. Yeah, I'll also say, by the way, just because I didn't end up taking this as one of my points elsewhere, I thought about doing this as my ugly point. Believe it or not, I actually think Outsiders also, this is where upsets aren't always good if you're a fan, right? Here's the problem. Even the narrative of the upset, which people love from movies, of like, you know, the underdog shouldn't win, but they win, right? That's only cool when the same underdog then goes on and wins the major or something. That makes it an awesome storyline. Like, the reason the Cloud9 winning Boston Major one's awesome is because, like, they did win and go on and take the title and all. Like, the problem Outsiders have is Mouse basically fucked them by beating up Cloud9, whereas if they got to beat Cloud9, there's a big scalp. Furia fucked them by beating Na'Vi. If they play Na'Vi instead, there's an awesome scalp. So the sad thing is, actually, for all we know, maybe Outsiders even would have beat these teams, but they never got to, unfortunately. They just never got them in the crosshairs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that a lot. What makes it exciting is, you know, beating those huge teams and coming out with wins where you're just completely not expected to come out with the victory. And in this case, it was always matches like Maui was alluding to, you know, playing Mouse twice, playing Fnatic twice. Always matches like, yeah, I mean, they're in it. They definitely have a chance of coming out with this one. Not, wow, if Outsiders win this, I will be completely shocked.
Yeah,
if they played Cloud9 in the semifinals, this run would feel it would be a lot more legitimized.
For sure.
And if it were Na'Vi in the grand finals, then it's just, you can't take anything away from them at all.
And by the way, I would even say that's what shows you that, like, even though now people are probably going to go too far the other way and overrate Outsiders, the way you know most people actually don't think they're truly world-class Maui is almost everyone in their pick'em had Cloud9 winning that semi-final. Now, that doesn't mean they think Cloud9's impervious, but we all know they have flaws. But we also know there's like a day if they woke up and just played their 10 out of 10 Counter-Strike, they would win that match. They just would. I'm sorry, they would. So that's like, I even thought, by the way, as an aside, it didn't end up happening. I even worried that the reason Outsiders wouldn't win would be they'd only play fucking CIS teams. Like, if they played Cloud9 then Na'Vi, they'd probably just lose one of those, mate. You know what I mean? Like, the bizarre thing is, like, those teams, maybe from the regional familiarity, they just actually are fine playing against them. They can still lose, but they don't seem like they have the same problems the Western teams do, mate.
It does seem like anytime an Eastern European team plays against Na'Vi in the server, they lose their balls. Like, everybody just. Yeah, you're against Simple and Electronic in the server. Even though Electronic wasn't having the best time, if you're Flit, you just are gonna play a little bit worse. If you're Fame or Norbert, like, you're just gonna play a little bit worse for sure. Yeah.
It's actually an underrated aspect, by the way. It's the reason why when pros seem really arrogant to up-and-coming players, what people don't realise is they do the opposite to the people who before them were the great players, which is why often people, in my opinion, like Nico, look silly when they want some teammate who was good like 5 years ago or something. It's like, bro, that was like 2016, it's fucking 2022, but whatever. We'll let that go. So come on, Maui, what was your good point? As I alluded to before, this is obviously going to be in a similar wheelhouse. Anyone who's followed the show before, what would the bingo card be of what might Maui go on about? Obviously, spoiler, you can't say shit about your kid on this episode. We get a break on that one. Get a little break. So what was the other player then? Come on, hit us with a Jame fucking angle. Come on.
Mine is that Jame got his major. Jame getting his major is my good. It's not Outsiders, it's that Jame did it, because this guy is it's easily a top 3 in-game leader of the past 4 years for me. He's behind Kerrigan, he's behind Glaive, he's right there. I was saying that whoever wins between Heroic and Outsiders for that grand final, I would just cement them as my top or my third best IGL of the last 4 years or so. And with Jame doing it, you now have this guy that's made a major finals with a team that nobody cared about. And it was one of those runs with the Vanguard where everybody was like, it was kind of like Spirit last major at Antwerp, where people are like, if you're not going to do anything with that semifinals run, just don't even make the semifinals. But now it's come full circle, and Jame has taken a different core, but with just Kicker right beside him, and actually made it and won the major. He's one-upped himself, and also this guy has just never lost relevancy for the last 4 years. Like Jame, with the whole time, I looked through all the teams that he was on over the past 4 years: the Vanguard team, the VP team, and Outsiders, and only briefly, basically, when they were losing players on the HLTV ranking, which obviously penalizes you, did they leave the top 15? Like, so it's basically like a formality based on the fact that they were making roster moves. Did they actually lose ranking points? So this team, like, he's kept this team in relevancy for so long. And also, I just think that the brand of CS that he plays, it is just so efficient. Like, it's kind of, and when he was doing this with a Vanguard too, at first people were like, I think people feared it because people knew this is actually just probably the best if you look objectively at how you're supposed to use the economy, how you're supposed to value the op, how you're supposed to play slow and use the entire clock, because everybody wants something that's a little bit flashier, that takes more risks. But then we see that, no, you actually should just play the most efficient style ever, because it's going to grind games out, it's going to grind your opponents down. And Jame now has also, as an individual player, just gotten better. Like, it was almost like one of the key pieces for a Vanguard in that 2019, 2018 era or whatever for them to make them better is having an elite opper, and now they have it, and it's their in-game leader.
Yeah, I mean, talking about grinding opponents down, you kind of grind the audience down a little bit too, honestly, watching Jame. No, but honestly, I totally agree with your points. Like, he's really brilliant in the way he kind of leads his team and burns down the clock and everything. I think what's also been good about Jame is, I don't necessarily think he's at the elite level in terms of being an opera, but he's definitely improved immensely, right? Like, he's looked so much better. And when he does, like Thorin was saying, like when he goes for those 1vx situations, it's so exciting to watch him because he really can pull them off very effectively.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, like, this is one of those ones where whenever a narrative changes historically, unfortunately, a lot of people just go with, like, it never changed, I was right all along, or like everyone else was right. Like, they just do that thing where, like, they act like there isn't any development and progression. So the sad thing is, I actually feel like this is going to make people ruin that fucking Vanguard run and pretend it was really good and they were awesome and they even had a chance and just had a bad game against it. Whereas, like, everyone knows that was the worst final ever to be played, probably ever in Counter-Strike. Like, it was a team that knew they had no chance, with no chance stylistically, playing against a team that had them covered on every map and even in individual players. Like, it was fucking bad, and it was bad for a reason. And so what I always say is, that combined with them winning that, like, fucking fugazi-ass blast 1 week later, where, like, anyone could just enter the venue in Moscow and fucking Zeus's last tournament, so half of it was like a vanity show for Zeus leaving the game. Like, that combined with them then online, though, becoming really good at getting Yakindar. People just forget that part I mentioned there, Mauisnake. They act like Yakindar was just always there or something, like I was hating on the team back then. The team that made the final of that Starlight of Berlin was a fucking absolutely whack-ass squad. It wasn't that good. If you even go back and look at that run, no one does this. Go back and look, like, as they're on that run, like some of the win rates on maps like Mirage that were getting them these huge wins. They were terrible. They were like, I'm going to say they were like 38% win rate on it against tier 2 teams. You go back and look at events before that. Dude, they're going to, like, tier 2 lands and not winning them and losing in, like, semi-finals and stuff to teams like the Forces of the world. I might not literally be Force, but that sort of a level of team. They're not playing like world class. So the problem I'm setting up here is this. Jame was not this player in 2019. He actually was all the fucking meme elements that now just are a meme and a stereotype, but they were true. He massively oversaved back then. Because he didn't have Yakindar, he played way too selfishly with some of the fucking calls in that team. I mean, I even think back then, one of the things that must have been holding them back to some degree was they had that core of players with them, like Kicker, and fucking Buster. I think at the time they'd already had it for like 4 years, Maui, in like 2019 or something mental. Like they just played together their whole careers basically. So I think they were like actually like in a cul-de-sac at that point in time. They had a style, but it was just idiosyncratic. It wasn't really yet great. I actually think if you look at Jame on all levels, as an IGL, he's about 3 times better in my opinion. As an AWPer, I also agree he's better. I don't think he's actually like, I don't think he's a contender for best AWPer. Like if you took him off IGL and you just threw him on a random team, I think essentially he's one of those people. A lot of IGLs are like this, you notice the good ones. They always themselves manage to find a way to like frag in their own system. It's like a mixture of, put it this way, Jame doesn't try to like make himself the star player or anything on this team. Like actually it's quite interesting the way he calls. Like I would even argue, by the way, this might be an interesting point for people. I'll throw it out there. I actually think fucking Cadian calls around his own AWP more than Jame does, mate. Jame just looks like he calls a strat and he happens to be the AWPer. Cadian looks like, and by the way, this is one of my criticisms of Heroic. One of the reasons I don't believe they ever will win big tournaments is because it looks like Cadian wants to do it while being the hero and the AWPer and the IGL. Like basically what people would say Jame did, but I don't think he did. I think he just did a good job as an IGL. He did a very good job as an AWPer. Wasn't like the best player in the tournament. Like yeah, I think all in all it's a pretty cool storyline. I have no ill will at all towards this angle. Like obviously, like I say, I'd rather they played some better teams, maybe they win. But what can you knock him? He succeeded in every area. Individually, he was really good. Probably the best tournament of his life. IGL wise, he was masterclass. Like again, go and look where the bad T sides. I'd even say, by the way, that's probably the coolest angle that everyone missed because of the upsets and the fact it wasn't the big names. You could argue the best fucking T-side team won in the ultimate CT meta. Like, that's actually pretty cool in a way. Like, if you wanted something to change the storyline, whereas meanwhile, if it had been like a Fury or something, these were just teams shooting everyone with the M4A1S, mate. Like, that wasn't like world-class Counter-Strike. That was just shooting people with guns, wasn't it? So, I think that angle's pretty cool. So, yeah, I think all in all, the Jame storyline's a great one. Just good all around.
I think that the whole like him leveling up and getting better, it was it's almost like they achieved too much with the Vanguard one, if you want to take that angle there, that they kind of had a run that was a little bit fluky there. But the fact that I'd say that that he did improve so much, like what we saw from Jame at this tournament also. Like he had moments where you would have thought that you would have known that 2019, even 2020 Jame would have just saved.
Oh, I remember for sure. Yes.
But like that Mau's series when he had that 1v3 on A side overpass retaking when he just destroyed the first 2 guys and then flicked Dexter at the front of bathrooms to close out the 1v3. Like I don't know where some of this stuff came from. Like Jame was possessed in this tournament, and that's also a little bit why you think that maybe it's not going to be sustainable. Because I don't know if Jame is going to always play at this level, because when we look at majors past, like Antwerp, some of the times when they actually lost, like Jame actually kind of underperformed, and I started to I didn't want to give him this label like that kind of like Cadian for the first 4 or 5 years of his career. I felt like every big game he was just a choke artist, and Jame, I started to feel that a little bit, especially at Antwerp and some of the tournaments at this year, like big ones. But then this one shed all my disbelief entirely, and he started to just go for rounds that he otherwise wouldn't have. And I started to think, okay, if he can do this regularly or slightly more, he would enter the like, you're never going to put him on the simple Zywoo level, but like the 1 tier below that, I think he's pretty safely there.
Sure. The only thing is, I will say it, like, as long as I set it up very carefully, narratively there, with all the right beams and structures holding it up, it all makes sense, Mauisnake. But if I do just think this sentence in my brain, Guardian will never win a major, but Jame has. That's like that fucking old Family Guy thing where they're drinking the epic hack or whatever. Like, being sick, it hurts, being sick again, That just sounds gross. Like, that's why, if you notice, by the way, this is why I think it's an interesting take. I personally put it more on Jame IGL in. Like, I know he actually had great rating, etc., but spoiler, he is probably the player invented to inflate that fucking HLTV rating, if you look out his calculator. But, like, so to me, like, I don't mind him being the MVP of the tournament, but I also include it because he IGL. Like, I think that's the coolest angle. It's the fact that he IGL'd the win. So, yeah, pretty cool. Yeah.
The whole him IGLing thing, because usually I think when we talk about MVPs, we kind of disregard that, because it's like they'd have to call the best T side ever for the IGL's stats to actually be inflated to the point we would give him MVP. But since Jame already put forward such a great individual performance, like the IGL is just enough of a boost that it's just so obvious he was the most valuable person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Sorry.
No, jump in.
I was just going to say, I think that Jame is just really good at utilizing the specific strengths of each of his players so very well. It doesn't really matter who's on his team. He knows where to deploy them effectively. And also, you know, just moving forward, I think that even if there are roster changes, he's proven that he's really sustainable. He can move forward and be a strong IGL, even if the core changes.
Indeed.
Actually, to that point, actually, I'll add on the fact that one of the reasons I was discrediting the likelihood of an Outsiders deep run at this is because coming into this event, JRT, we worked the ESL Challenger Valencia event, and we saw their overpass versus Movistar Riders there, and I was like, Norbert's just not an A player. Like, this is just dumb. Like, don't ever. I was expecting everybody was going to keep punishing Outsiders on that map if they watched that game, but then nobody really cared to. But then at this event, they swapped around like two roles, like at least Norbert and Fame. They might have even swapped around another rifler too, but like that simple switch just made this team into basically the tournament's best overpass team. And so if you can just get the most out of players like that, and you're not going to be like, no, we must just keep trying, because you know some teams honestly they have these spots that just don't really seem to work, and then they just keep trying it. A good example of this right now would be Vitality's Dupree and Spinks combo on the B bomb site. Like that's just one of the weakest site defenses I've seen right now in modern CS. So I would love to see that change, but they're just gonna keep trying it. They will. I know what they're gonna do, but like with Jame, you know that he's just like, guys, this sucks. We're going to change it to something better. And I love that pragmatic approach. It makes me believe in IGLs a lot more.
Yeah, he's always adapting. And I mean, to be honest with you, take any one of these individual players and move them away from Outsiders, I don't think they would have performed nearly as well because, like I said, Jame is just utilizing them as effectively as possible, and he's always adapting.
Right. For my good point, mine's more of just a wax lyrical one, basically. There's no like deep element to it. It's just basically like, even this is one of the areas I've noticed when we set up the narratives for people's careers that we don't always do such a great job, is because the tournament circuit in Counter-Strike is so expansive and full spectrum, and you're always playing at some tier, and you get a lot of like sample size under your belts. We do actually tend to like crown people, as it were, as like great players and all-time great before they've actually done fucking anything at majors. If you notice, it's actually true. So I have to say, even though in your brain it's going to feel like surely he's done some more of that, like. You know, KSCERATO hasn't been in many finals in his career, or many like big fucking matches, you know, like if people don't know, them just going out in the quarters of majors was like the best they've ever done. Like the problem they had was they were obviously the up and comers, much like an Vanguard in 2019, the year before we went online. And then in online play, they were trapped in North America, so no one really cares about those results. And then when we came back to LAN, they were actually one of the teams that I actually thought always like that sort of false starts when we came back to the LAN era. Like PGL Stockholm, they were just whatever, weren't they? They weren't some elite team. PGL Antwerp, remember, they were the ones who got shocked by the Spirit team. Like those are the fucking rookies on a major. So I think that KSCERATO specifically, having the tournament run he did, is enormous, especially because this guy did play Na'Vi. He did play simple, and the fucking got 4 people who've won a major. And mate, like, he's been very good in the past. Like, the eye test has always checked out on this player. But, like, this was just, like, some legendary shit. Like, that, even the game that he had where they almost pulled it back against fucking Heroic, and he had the, like, 18-1 personal run on CT. Like, look, again, you can do the joke of it. He's just using the M5MS. Yeah, but he's killing, like, 2 people with it every single time. And his first bullet is, like, in aimbot, just going to their head every single fucking time. Dude, he would even do the thing where he does the wide swing and like the first bullet. Like, I made this point on my watch party, right? 'Cause it's one of those nuanced things from watching loads of demos I noticed that people don't. I'll tell you a detail that sets apart the god aimers from just really good aimers, right? I'll give you an example. If you get some player, like, take whoever you want, Elige or like fucking Stown or something. These are really good aimers, by the way. Like, these guys, if they put them in aim labs or something, they'd have really top scores, consistent aim. The reason why people like Config in KSCERATO are different, Maui, is this. They do that shit where, I'm not joking, they fire before the crosshair gets there, because that's how sick their mechanics are. It's like I always said, the reason, you know, Nico probably is the actual best aimer ever in Counter-Strike is because Nico legit, the reason he does all those one-taps is because his brain knows, like, yeah, that did it. And he just stops firing. Like, you know, a normal human just fires the second and third bullet just in case you miss. Like, he just goes like, nah, that'll do it. Like, he has time within the moment of firing to go, no need to waste another kilojoule of energy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the dude KSCERATO does that, mate. Every time, it's like the crosshair just goes to the head. It's mental. Like, the joke is, I would really think he had like a fucking aim key or something in that match if I didn't know it was a LAN semi-final of a world championship. Like, I thought he was unbelievable at this tournament, mate. And it's like I said afterwards, like, Jim wins the MVP. But mate, KSCERATO might have been the best player in that tournament. He was unreal.
It was, yeah. If you got it, JRT, go for it. Go for it.
No, go for it.
Okay, okay. I'd say in terms of mechanics, KSCERATO was the best player at this entire event. And where I would where some people might want to think about somebody that plays similar roles to KSCERATO and why he's above it. It's like, if you think of someone like Na'Vi, they kind of like do these similar T-side roles where you see him in the late round. They have to like clutch these situations out here and there. But why Na'Vi is hard capped for like why he's never going to actually be an ascendant player, like top 5 in the world, is that he goes for body shots a lot more. And KSCERATO is just like a headshot. When he's on, he's a headshot machine. Like it's one of those few distinguishing factors between when you have the best players in the world, that if they just go for body shots, which Na'Vi does, you actually give your team consistency in those kinds of moments, because it is just straight up easier to go for body shots. Like if you look at the headshot percentage, and it's a stat that generally speaking nobody should care about, but you actually do want to distinguish between the world class and the players that are just like of the upper echelon. Then the world-class players are the ones that are actually going to have slightly higher headshot percentage. It's why it's why Twist, for example, when he's in form, just feels like he can pull anything out, and it's why he got that magician nickname, because in the span of 3 seconds he could kill 4 people, and that's what KSCERATO was doing at this event. And like Na'Vi, for example, very good, and I'm not trying to rag on the guy, but he just goes for body shots more. Yeah. He just feels more comfortable doing it. And KSCERATO, when he's in a 1v3, he's gonna headshot 2 of those players, maybe body shot the last. Like it's almost like a switch flips in his head that, once it gets to the 1v1, he can relax a little bit more. But Na'Vi tries to do it the whole way through, and it's like you're never actually going to win the 1v3 if they're tightly spaced. Like you're basically preying on the fact, or hoping that they're going to have bad spacing, or you're going to take advantage of them not playing great team CS. But KSCERATO, when he's in a late round situation, they can play great team CS, but his mechanics can trump great CS.
Oh, you muted. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I just muted myself. Sorry. Yeah, no, but I couldn't agree more. Like, honestly, KSCERATO, I know we're going back to North America here, and it's not really that important, but I remember watching them back in advanced finals. I think it was 4 years ago against Intact. The team again they were against doesn't matter, but KSCERATO was unbelievable. I could tell at that moment that he was going to be something special. It took him a while to get there at the highest level of play, but seeing him do that throughout this major was absolutely unbelievably incredible. And I know headshot percentages aren't tracked much, but I do keep track of them every single match that I cast. And honestly, he's always been that good. He's always been that mechanically strong. It's just about being at that level against top tier teams. And I mean, like Thorin said, he did it against Na'Vi, and doesn't get much better than that.
No, absolutely, exactly. The joke is, like, that's the only one where I feel like fans come with like weird angles, where it's like, you can see it about Outsiders, where they beat Maus and fucking Fnatic, who cares? Or you can go and look at some of this. The difference is, he actually did do it against Na'Vi. Like, you can even go up to Na'Vi and yeah, but it's not his fault, is it? Like, they were in the server, they were there, Simple was there, they did put ops into Simple's hands and go, would you like to kill him, sir? He just said no. So it's not KSCERATO's fault. And spoiler, I'm pretty sure KSCERATO and Furia were helping Na'Vi have that underperformance. Like, it's obviously connected in it. Right, come on then. Hit us with the bad point now, JRT. What is your bad point you're going with here?
Okay, this one I've been feeling for a while, but the major final being a BO3 instead of a BO5. So, look, there were a lot of problems with the format. I think seeding, I think the fact that there's so many BO1s instead of BO3s, in particular the Legend stage, but I'm not going to get into that. I just want to focus on the final being a BO3 instead of a BO5. I know there's like a lot of hate towards BO5s and how long they take, but there's honestly merit to them existing. And I know, Thorin, you've gone into this a lot, so I don't want to spend too much time on that point, but still, I mean, they just get overutilized. That's the biggest problem, is they should be exclusively for the highest tier of play. The major, at the very least, I think the final should be a BO5. And we've seen in terms of memorability, just look back at the Pro League final, Vitality versus Liquid was incredible. IEM Cologne, FaZe versus Na'Vi. I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see these intense battles of endurance going down. And I mean, I don't know how much you guys watch tennis, but back in between 2008 and 2012, I was really, really into it, during the Federer and Nadal era. And one match actually not involving Federer that really sticks out in my mind was Australian Open 2009, Verdasco versus Nadal. It was a 5-set marathon. I remember staying up almost all night because it was on Australia, obviously, and the time zone differences were crazy. But man, it was just absolutely intense. Sticks out of my mind, and it went all 5 sets. sets. So for me, and I'm not going to remember a 3-set match that much. And there's no way. It's not going to happen. And even you look at the ATP 1000, they used to have BO5s as their final. That was the next level below, you know, the Grand Slams. But now they don't have it anymore. As of 2009, I think it was. But 2008, sorry. And you look, and if you do a you do a Google search, you can find threads or people saying, hey, can you bring back the BO5s? And, you know, I don't want to see a BO3 in the ATP 1000 finals. There's a reason for that. It's because they're more memorable, that they're fantastic, they're emotionally charged. That's when the real magic happens.
By the way, just in case people miss, like the point he was making at the end there is because they removed best of fives as the final at the level below the Grand Slams, the Grand Slam would be equivalent to the major. It made it seem more important that you have it at the major. So your point is the reason you also want the best of, essentially you're actually asking for two things, right? You're asking for the major to be a BO5 final, and let's have less of them in non-major tournaments to make it more special, right?
Precisely, yes. There's no question. I mean, we need to make sure that this feels like something special. It feels like a battle of endurance that you won't really see anywhere else. Maybe at a couple of other higher level tournaments, like right below, but just the major in particular, it has to be there.
I wholly agree, because I actually was thinking I didn't go with this for my ugly point or anything, but in some ways, I just feel like the way the major is, because of the seeding and because of it not being a BO5, sometimes when I actually just zoom out a little bit, the major feels like any other S-tier tournament, and I think that would be changed with the BO5 Grand Finals. I don't really want to. I would actually. I mean, I don't know where I would take away BO5s. I guess like ESL Pro League. I guess Pro League as it stands right now would probably be the one where I would make it a BO3 Grand Finals, just because that's just kind of what the effort into that whole product feels like to me right now. But I think that for Cologne, like easily Cologne Grand Finals this year is just the best Grand Finals, and we're just not getting anything better than that. I mean, Blast Fall Finals and Global Finals could have the sickest BO3s, but that was just an all-time series. So but like Na'Vi and FaZe Grand Finals BO5, like it's everything you would have wanted. The seeding, everything kind of worked out, even though some of the playoffs and bracket and everything didn't work out as fortunately. Like we had Movistar and Maus in there at the time, which felt weird, and Astralis. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Just to get back to your point, BO5 just feels essential for the major. And at this point, it almost just feels like the only reason we're not doing it is because of tradition's sake, which is just a bad reason to do anything. Like tradition isn't really, like, that's not an argument.
Obvious joke would be something like, well, the problem is it's maps, not rounds, isn't it? But like, we get 5 bullets in an AWP. We can't even have 5 maps in a grand final. What's the logic? I thought you said 5's enough. You know, so it should be enough. No, because the thing is, that's the problem I have with that whole topic, right? It's like, obviously it's a main position I've made for a few years now. So yeah, I agree. I think the major should be a best of 5. And I even think the 2 tournaments this year, Antwerp and Cologne, show it, because the joke is, Cologne felt like you watched the Antwerp final, which was super close, 3 maps, and we're like, would you like to continue? We're like, actually, I would, yeah. Maybe just keep going in map 4. Like, who would say no in that point? Because I've always said it, I did a pretty good job doing like a full spectrum attack of all the classic counters that people do to this one. Probably the worst counter ever, in my opinion. I'm not going to do it from the usual angle I do, which is when people go, they're not satisfying, there's too many that are just easy, but then they still say they last a really long time. It's like, well, which is it? Was it a 3-0 that was shit, or did it last too long? If it lasted too long, it was. So what I would say is this: there's a point right in the middle of that I think people also miss, which is this. It's true, you're going to get more actual finals which are one-sided because of like how big the score is and how one person's going to get closer to 3. You are going to get 3 1s and 3 0s a lot. But what I'll say is an upside is this. You only get 2 majors a year. Here's what's good about having a best of 5 final. This final here would have shown it, right? So, you know, after the first map in this final, you saw that like pretty much Heroic just broke and they got gradually worse and worse and worse and worse. And so realistically, you got about 1.5 maps worth of play, right? Even if Outsiders win 3-0, a whole other map gives so much more time for Heroic to get their shit together, to have a good map. By the way, I'm fine with that. Even if you get 3-0'd, people also miss this. Not every 3-0 is bad. Make it a good series. Like, if you're in 2 of the maps, it's really close, or one's an OT, that could be enough. Like, it's actually an angle I think people really miss when they talk about formats. It's the same reason why Double Elim's really good. You don't have to argue anything else other than you get more good matches as well as bad matches too, but you get good ones. And spoiler, if you think about how your memory works, you just delete all the matches you don't care about about. But the really great matches, like Maui's saying, that Cologne final might just be the best Counter-Strike final ever of any tournament ever. Like, it's just the shit, wasn't it? Like, you'll put up with a million whack 3Z rolls for that. So yeah, for similar reasons, I also think this final here would have been improved. Like, I don't think Heroic would have just chalked away 2 whole maps. Like, they'd have gotten it together for 1, or they might have picked up their level. By the way, that's also why I think it really proves the champion better. Because one of the bad things about best of 3, not as much in this meta, I'll admit, because you always get the guns all the time, but especially in the old reset meta, mate, you can speedrun a fucking best of 3 if you have a really bad first map. Like, think about this. Imagine, like, the map is like, you know, I pick fucking nukes, or you get to start CT side. I lose, like, 16-9, but obviously most of that's just me getting beaten because I'm on T side. Then we go to the next map. It's your map pick, but it's like a map that doesn't matter what side you start on, and now you start good. I'm almost lost the series already. Like, I feel like there's barely any play in this final. So I also think people just underestimate that, like, we're all willing to put up with the shit aspects of best of 3s, guys. There's plenty. We have plenty of whack best of 3 games and series that no one cares about. So, like, I know, like, we're all pretty much on the same point on this one, but yeah, basically I agree. I think this is, to me, it's just a slam dunk at this point in time. I don't see that many downsides. That's why we made it not just about the whole circuit, it's just about this one major in it, or the 2 majors in general. Did anyone have a last point on that before we move on?
I think just if it's Cato, Cologne, and the 2 majors, I think you kind of have a quarterly BO5 sort of setup, and I think that's probably all you would want to run, because if you start including both pro league, like 6 BO5s a year just feels excessive. So I think 4 is just the right amount.
Plus, the joke is, you might think to yourself, yeah, but what about all those other tournament organisers that want to run best of 5? Well, first of all, don't worry about that, because we'll let ESL just monopolise the whole industry. So what we'll do is, ESL, as the, like, dominant hegemon, do you like that term, Mauisnake? As the hegemon of the Counter-Strike global system, they will get the best of 5s, but then, obviously, their vassal empire of Blast, they just have to do best of 3s to be distinguished from. So, problem solved. I think we've solved the whole thing, right, guys? So, there you go. There you go. Did you have a final point, JRT?
No, not really. I just think we have to make the BO5 feel special on building on Maui.
Yeah, I thought that was a good point to make as well. Like, because I also agree with your angle. If you then, like, because actually people don't know, that was actually also, this is another point I'll throw in there. The other angle that worked about that in tennis specifically was, surprise, surprise, when you take away the best of 5 for the ATP 1000, you get way more upset winners. Like, you'll get a guy who just wins a BO3. The joke was, back when, like, Federer could never beat fucking Djokovic in a final, he won a bunch of fucking ATP 1000 because it's like playing half a match. Like, if you just have a great start, like I said, you can win. Anyone can do it. Whereas to actually beat, like, the great players, just like the great teams in Counter-Strike in a best of 5, it's like, mate, you better be fucking amazing. Like, you can't trip over and win this shit, right? If we go now to the bad, what is your bad point, Mauisnake?
That Cloud9 botched another tournament possibility here. That
have you changed this one? That wasn't what you told me.
Yeah, I changed. I changed.
Oh, no, sorry, you did change that. That's right. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I changed this one. Yeah, this was this was to me and to many a bracket that essentially pitted Na'Vi versus Cloud9, and it felt like they had to collide in the grand finals, and yet we were robbed of that. Not because Outsiders, a domestic matchup, went the wrong way, but MAU's, a team that is playing on their first major playoffs, is defeating them. And just the way that it happened is where I take so much issue with how Cloud9 plays, and because I think that I think many people have conflated what we see in mid rounds between like 3 players of Cloud9 coming together and the actual style that the calling is. And I think that's where people are like, where many, including myself, I think, before I started diving deeper into it, we were saying, like, you know, Cloud9 online, they could play the best style in the world or whatever, but it's so predicated on individuals just playing with top tier mechanics that you have to then label it as a very inconsistent style. Like, it basically, if you swung top mid on Mirage every single round with the best rifler in the world, with Nico, when his mechanics are on, you will look like the best team in the world, because he'll just one-tap the guy in window, he'll one-tap the guy on cat, and then he'll just get into con. And that's essentially what that's what Cloud9 are doing, but they do it slower. They do it a little bit slower, and they just use their mechanics to get themselves into different positions on the map. And that's where I have to just draw issue with what Groove, actually, I put it all on Na'Vi, but I realize that it's actually, a lot of it is the system that Groove has created for this team, that he thinks basically you can use mechanics to shortcut having good map control procedures. And that's why this team has had so many ups and downs all year. Like, not even making playoffs at Antwerp, falling to MAU's here, Cologne losing to Astralis, losing to Liquid, and then the level of inconsistency here for Cloud9 is too great for me now that I just have to draw so much issue with the way that this team is even structured. And I'll just put it out there also, like, I have, if I want to just point the finger at one person, it still has to be Na'Vi. I've been riding this train for a very long time now,
Yes.
and I'm going to continue doing it. That if you can't put what we're considering two of the best players of this year in Shiro and Axile on a team that's at least making the semifinals of a major, that's just a catastrophic failure. And you need to then reassess how you're playing Counter-Strike as a whole, because the way we've dressed this, that they can play the most tactical CS, is because when they are in the 3-on-3s, they can play like Astralis. They'll throw that one flash that they need. They can play off of each other's crossfires. Their fundamentals are incredibly sound. It's just that their setups and openers, to me, are now not efficient. They just don't work that well.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of Outsiders, right? With that structure in place strategically, they're so very strong. And then you look here at Cloud9, they're relying, like you were saying, too much on their mechanical ability. And yes, you're going to find success in some cases, but you'll never have a player perform mechanically at the same level, very rarely mechanically at the highest level, not to mention one, but your entire team for an entire major, for an entire tournament. Eventually, people are going to slip up. Someone else has to step up. And if that doesn't happen, well, then you get what happened to Cloud9, right? They couldn't get past the first round of the playoffs and were shut down. So, I mean, look, you talked about Cloud9. I think they were shut out when they should have had more success. Na'Vi as well. It's unbelievable how this major went down. But at the end of the day, I mean, we got Outsiders who got that victory, but still, Cloud9 could have performed a lot better than they did. And I think they just need to add a little more structure, like you said, to their openings, and they'll be much better.
Yeah, the problem I have is, as the years gone on and you watch these players, like, it's one of the reasons why I actually don't buy the angle that people sometimes try to push. Like, in my opinion, it is true on some level that, like, how good the star players are reflects on the IGL, because its system must be enabling them some way, or at a minimum not inhibiting them, and usually you'd say enabling, like setting them up and figure out what they want. Yeah. But at the same time, people do sometimes act like they press the fucking mouse one for them as well. Like, at the end of the day, like, the player takes over at that point, guys, and does what he does. Because I sort of agree a bit, Mauisnake, in this sense, which is, if you look, right, when they're at their absolute peak, Shiro and Axile, it doesn't look at all like it's because there's some, like, system product or something. They are the system. That's the joke, right? Yeah. Because Shiro's, like, the most consistent, like, fucking follow-up AWPer probably ever, and he hits every off-angle shot, and it's just a CT monster. By the way, he's not getting told to do anything on CT. He's doing whatever the fuck he wants. And then Axile is just, like, fucking entering / space creating, but just shooting everyone in the head immediately. Like, well, what's Na'Vi doing there? Like, basically, like, it's like a rework of the old Nico go kill joke, isn't it? That, by the way, originally was Forrest go kill. The joke is, like, yeah, that strat doesn't work for anyone else in Na'Vi because they don't have fucking Axile running around that corner. They don't have Shiro waiting to kill 3 people while you do something else on the outskirts of the map. Like, they don't have that. So, spoiler, you don't have it either. Like, that player does that. You don't do that. Like, I can't replace those players tomorrow with, like, 2 different exact equally skilled players and get the same result. Like that, those players have grown into those roles as well. I actually do sort of feel like you could drop both those players in any other team and they would be equally as good. Like, why would they be worse? That would be the problem. I'd say, why would they be worse? And if the question is why would they be worse, I am sort of implying, like, what is Na'Vi doing? Like, why? I've just said I'm giving them to someone else. There's no problem for them. Like, I think a great sign.
With Na'Vi himself, he also sometimes just takes on these art performances, like the player from Furia. He just kind of runs in and just kind of dies too quickly, and you start, like, you get this vibe that it's kind of like, why do you have to sacrifice yourself to try to quote unquote open up space for these guys? Like, when you have teams that are more structured, like even the way Mau's calls, I just like it so much better than the way that Cloud9 calls. Like, if I look at almost every team in these playoffs, with the exception of maybe Furia themselves and Na'Vi when they don't really have a true IGL right now, like, I think everybody calls better than Cloud9. That's where I really just have gotten so frustrated with this team, because it just, nothing's assisting these players anymore. And it kind of goes back to that example I was saying earlier. It's just like, if you are just basically putting forward an inconsistent style, saying this is your structure, and it's just like swinging top mid on any map would do the same thing. It's inconsistent. It relies entirely on your own team's mechanics, and it's like, it works against everything that we have basically been saying about why structure and a system matters in Counter-Strike for the last decade.
I'll also throw in there as well, like, the specific example, because it was the last map of the tournament, mate. That tournament, if people don't know, ended with Cloud9 just failing to ever be able to get onto bomb sites on fucking Ancient. The map everyone talks is the retake map. They could never even get into fucking B. This is real, guys. The B bomb site onto that map. And the whole reason why, because that one half alone made me like an Na'Vi hater, mate. Because I just watched him take some of the best riflers in the world and just tell them, like, the nightmare for an entry player. Like, run through a brick wall 10 more times. But, sir, last time I ran through, I got hit by the brick. Like, just run through it again. Like, dude, that was actually anti-IGLing. Like, he was just making his team force feed through fucking smoke and exertion over and over again, basically. Like, I couldn't believe that, dude, because like I say, especially the map, like, first of all, your opponent's right there for the taking. It's a bunch of fucking academy players in a major on a massive stage. They should be the ones shitting themselves, not you, mate. And then secondly, like, adapt at some point in time. Like, dude, he didn't. He actually did it where it was like, it's almost like this, the equivalent of what you were talking about there. It's like, let's go down with the ship. Just going down with the ship. Like, what? Change it up. Do something different.
When I was watching that,
I was mouthing so hard, mate.
I couldn't believe how free it looked for exertion. Like, just holding cave with an A1S, just mowing people down every time. They were trying to. Okay, so I went back. Like, of the 10 times I think that they had T-side, they had 10 T-side rounds in that one. One of them they used a molly to get exertion out of cave. Every other time, he just got to sit in cave. And the one time they mollied him out, it was actually when they had Tech 9s. So it actually just was like one of the, like, sometimes it's nice to take map control when you have rifles. Like, I don't know if this is a foreign concept to Na'Vi, but he wants to get, like, it's almost like he wanted to set everybody up once they had Tech 9s so they could get closer. It's like, maybe just do it once instead of trying to jiggle into cave, or they tried throwing a flash through a smoke to try to blind exertion. It just failed, and then they just tried running through a smoke also at him. It was like, exertion, everybody, we all propped up exertion for having an incredible cave hold like that. Like, that probably was in his head the easiest cave hold he has had, like, for the last 4 months of his life. Like, there were dudes literally running through smoke sideways, and he wasn't even blind. It's like, anybody, any of us in this call could have held cave in some of those rounds.
I don't know if I could, but no, maybe when I was younger.
Sure.
But no, yeah, it's just, I think it's the most frustrating thing to watch an IGL call the same thing over and over and over again because they just ran out of options, or they feel they ran out of options. But instead, you know, call a timeout, take a step back, and think about a way to adapt to what's coming toward you. Like you were saying, Thorin, it frustrates me too. Like, I think I saw it at Rotterdam. I'm not sure if it was Mauis that were hitting B on Mirage repeatedly, and I can't remember which team it was. But either way, come on, guys, like, take a step back, think about it, and try to do something a little bit different. Don't just keep banging your head against the wall repeatedly.
I'll just say this as well, and I'll segue to my point. Basically, the one other thing I'll say that I don't think plays to your theory overall, Maui, is this. When I think of all the games, I've watched all the Cloud9 series they played on LAN. Their team is probably the worst ever for having this pattern. If everyone plays well, they win and look amazing. If any of the stars play bad, they don't win. That's terrible if you're the IGL. Like, the joke is, if I ever make all those cases I do for people that everyone else thinks is shit, like MSL, it's because, mate, I could show you like half a dozen series where, like, they win the series and it's like, that's no business winning. Like, how are you winning on this map? This player underperformed. Like, you got countered here. Like, because I can actually show you the fingerprints of what he was doing. Like, I have a hard time. Essentially, you set up correctly, actually, Maui. The real problem is this. Because of how amazing they were online and how consistently they won, we sort of just assume all of that was Na'Vi and that, like, he was like the super brain genius who taught them all how to play the game. Whereas I think actually the more the time it emerges, they actually do look like they have an amazing roster of players who've just grown over the years. It doesn't really look like it was just one guy did the whole thing, you know. It's not like some Alexi B Ent shit where it's like, how was this team winning? It's like, now you look back, like, this is a fucking good set of players, actually. Like, they should be doing well, if not better, maybe. So yeah.
Yeah. If I want to actually do one last point on what I've heard and like what I know from the videos I've watched about Na'Vi's calling and why it's depreciated so much, is that Groove was mid-rounding for them when they were online. Like, if you watch those Gambit comms videos, Groove is literally telling them what rotations to make, and Na'Vi has still failed to catch up as an in-game leader. And that's why I'm calling for his head so much. Like, that's why I just give me any other in-game leader, because I don't think Na'Vi has proven over a year now, a year of playing on LAN, that he can make adjustments in the middle of the game, and it has to be a timeout. It has to be Groove that comes up with the new idea or the new game plan to implement, because they will just run their heads into the wall if it's just left up to Na'Vi and his calling.
Yeah, actually just remembered which team it was that was going B every round in Mirage. It was Eternal Fire, and they didn't really have an IGL at Rotterdam, so that's kind of showing you where an fan is. I don't want to be mean, but man,
Yeah.
No, I mean, funny thing is, I actually, if you ever go back and watch by the numbers, that's the reason I actually predicted Gambit would be way worse on LAN, because I was like, you don't have all the coaches to talk the whole time. Like, you don't think that makes those CT comms fucking crisp as hell. Like, a guy literally stood in the same venue going like, rotate now because I'm looking at his monitor that you can't see. Like, give me a break. Like, you don't have that on LAN yet. So, just spoiler, that's where people like Harrigan stock just goes through the roof, isn't it? Yeah. Like, he is doing all the same shit, right? From my bad point, I'll just steal what would have been Mauisnake, so you even get like a little fucking blooper reel here. Because I had a different one, but this is actually a better one, which is, I'll just take yours, which is, I actually think of all the things that have happened this year, like I made a whole video about, like, if you think about it, if you actually stack all the circumstances Simple's been in, I actually do feel pretty bad for him this year. He's had such a fucking rough time of it. He's had so many times where like he's this close, but then some other team's better, or some bullshit's going on back home, or his team has to change players. Spoiler, they're probably gonna have to change again now. Like, the joke is they're just so good as players. We all just decided like, nah, you can just keep some Young forever. Like, just play with him for the rest of your career. Like, that's how insanely good Na'Vi was, that we all just pretended like, actually, I'd rather not think about this roster move. But I have to say, if you look historically, I'm talking about when his career is over, mate, this is going to be the biggest what if ever, is this fucking major. Because, bro, when you arrive at this round of 8, these 8 teams, and I don't even care, by the way, that they had Furia. Like, yeah, in theory, like, Furia's like, that's a team that hadn't played anyone good in the tournament so far. Like, this is, no joke, for specifically from the Na'Vi POV, this is the freest major you'll ever get in your entire career. Like, I think of some of the majors Simple didn't win, mate. He was like an unbelievable player, having to drop like 40 bombs. You still lose. Like, bro, this is the one that's a killer. Because not only did you not win it, you blew it in the quarters. Like, dude, you could have at least added like another final or something. I don't know if people know this. I think if Simple had made the final, he'd have the record for most finals appearances. Like, there's a little stat for you. Didn't get it, of course. You blew it. And on top of it, you played like shit as well. Simple actually played fucking whack in this quarters. Like, I've genuinely never seen anything like it, mate. Like, if people want to meme on me, because I made that like tweet on the third map, like, now Simple just takes on, like, because he just does in the rest of his career. Have you never seen this guy play? Like, this guy does not have 3 bad maps in a row. He can have a map that for him's bad. Dude, this was like bad for a normal star player. Like, he was just underwhelming in these games. So I think for Na'Vi as a team, it'll be brutal, but for Simple's career especially, this will be the one that you look back on and you're like, fuck, I should have whatever, 1 extra ring that he ends on. Like, this should have been another one. And the saddest part about it is, by the way, if he'd even won it, everyone would just be going, yeah, it's a bit sort of cheap, isn't it? It doesn't really count like the other. You didn't even win it. You didn't even do that. So I have to fucking give it to you for that. Like, that's so underwhelming to me. This is way worse, in my opinion, than sort of having an underwhelming Cologne final or not winning Antwerp. This is the worst one, mate, because like, I think of his whole career, like someone like me 3 years ago would be like, just give him an easy run for once. He got it and fucking blew it, mate. Sad, but it happened.
With Simple in this one, he just played at a lower level than we're used to, and I think when I like considering the tweet he made about please don't boo us and everything, I actually have to factor that in a little bit, and I usually wouldn't even think that something like that would phase Simple, where you would hope that, honestly, like, he's risen above crowds before. Like, that's not something foreign to him or anything. But when you actually look, like, when watching that game, he really just didn't find, like, trade frags. Like, he wasn't peeking corners the same way. It felt like he was
even whiffed all the basic op shots, mate. Yeah. You know, the normal shot you always hit to me, just whiff him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just missing more. Like, it's like his mechanical ability was clearly worse in this game, because he wasn't. I mean, they still play similar CS to what they normally do, but it's just like they were so scatterbrained in this game, and it actually did feel like this is one of the times when I actually think like the Brazilian crowd actually made an impact on the game. Like, I don't know. I actually have no other way to really frame this, because if you just took these two teams in a studio and just plopped them there and no crowd, no ambient sound, I think Na'Vi wins this 9 out of 10 times. You know, you get the one game where KSCERATO goes God mode, and you kind of got that on the stage right here today, or that day. And it's just so bewildering that somebody that we want to and do consider the greatest in our sport is just susceptible to chokes like this, because it's not like I mean, they were clear favorites in this one. I think everybody anybody that's like sensible throughout this was gonna have them making it through.
Dude, I think 100% of those pickups I saw had them winning this match against Fury. I don't think anyone had Fury beat them, did they? Come on.
No, like the only people doing that were just like straight up like taking the audience. Like they're gonna take the crowd versus the actual team in the server.
Yeah, and I mean, like, mine were the same. Like, I had Na'Vi taking it all. I was like, this is on a silver platter. Here you go. Like, here's your major. Here's your second major. Take it. It's all yours. No problem. But I don't know. Like, why is Simple even tweeting about the crowd before the game? Who cares about the crowd? Focus on your own game. I was so shocked to even see that happen. Like, God, man, like, why would you even ask for that in the first place? I don't even want to get into it any further. But you saw him. I think it was after some die one. He clutched a 1v2, and he's going like this to the crowd. I'm like, dude, fuck. Like, I get it. Simple does that, but still, like, you know, he's just trying to maybe back up his tweet or something like that. I have no idea what he was thinking in that moment, because they were booing him, and who cares though? Like, I don't know. It's just so strange to me that Na'Vi failed in such a significant way. Like you were saying, Thorin, like Simple played so badly. Every time, like, oh, here's a chance. Here's where Simple is going to make his mark on this match. Nope, nothing. Fell completely flat.
Plus, it's also just so wacky. You think of the brand. Like, this guy was the most toxic guy of all time. This was the guy where you'd have some legend like Markov or Blade, and he'd be like, oh, you dickhead, like, you don't even know how to play that spot. Watch what I do now.
Exactly.
Then you come 5 years later, he's like lost his mojo, like Austin Powers 2 or something, like, guys, please don't boo me. Oh, they booed me. Oh, like some fucking, like, little golem creature, like, back to the cave I go. Like, what are they? You're the greatest of all time. Not only that, he's supposed to be on some Michael Jordan shit. I'm just like, I crush you all. Like, not like, please don't boo me. Like, what the fuck? That's so whack, bro. If you're gonna do that, don't go out and have one of the worst playoff series of your entire life right after you've tweeted that. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I mean, his voice did become like Michael Jackson's. Actually, that's how I read the tweet. Actually, at the later stages of his career. Yeah, I think this is also like why like for a greater picture here for Simple and like the GOAT conversation. This is why I think it's so it just like easily. Like I really think like it could be someone like Monacy in 5 years. Like it really could be, and also why I was kind of bummed about G2 not making this, because I think there's people that are going to be nipping at his heels within like 3-4 years if they build up the right kind of resume, because Simple has a lot of these moments that you're going to be able to pick apart. If someone like Monacy, for example, like, come on, Monacy's first like great grand finals Katowice, he absolutely nailed it, and if he's able to like enter a few more of those with that sort of poise and form, then I don't see any reason why in 3-4 years he's not going to have a nice cabinet of trophies that can actually match up with him. And so Simple's the GOAT now, but in 5-6 years, I think somebody else is going to be very much so in that conversation.
If the classic first-time deposit bonus doesn't appeal to you, then how about the one on your screen? Get a free up to 100 USDT risk-free bet. So what you do is, for your first ever crypto bet on the site, place the wager. Then, if you lose it, message the mod mail, discord.gg/esportsbet, message mod mail, tell them Last Free Nation sent you, and you want the, whatever it is, risk-free bet. So you'll get up to 100 USDT, depending on what your stake was, returned to you. I would suggest, as a pro tip, place that first wager on an underdog. That way, if you win the bet anyway, you get a multiplier. And if you lose, you get your original stake back. Right, let's go to the final category then. So, JRT, what is your ugly point for this major?
For me, the ugly point is the crowd at the major, honestly. I mean, look, we talked about how fantastic they were, right, for the Brazilian teams, and that's great and all, but that makes it even uglier with the way the semifinals and the finals went down, because we know what they're capable of, and what they brought to the semis was literally no one in the seats almost. And in the finals, look, it was full. There were people there, but I think they were just warming the seats. That's all they were really doing.
There was a lot of like golf clap type shit, wasn't it?
Oh my God. It's literally in my notes, like golf claps happening at the end of rounds. I'm like, what am I watching? Like, I'm watching Counter-Strike, or am I watching a golf match with just, oh yeah, you got it in the hole. Yeah, you know, there's the putt that he made. I mean, what is happening here at this major? And just like, you know, take 20 minutes, go and watch Antwerp, or even Stockholm. Go and watch the Antwerp major though. Take the first 10 minutes of that, then go watch 10 minutes of the first 10 minutes of the Rio final, and oh my goodness, like the contrast is crazy. I mean, in the Antwerp final, you had people cheering for Na'Vi, people cheering for FaZe. You could hear the battle in the crowd happening, and of course that battle's happening at home too, so you get even more into it. But then, you know, at Rio, nothing. Like maybe they were saying Outsiders were their favorites, but I mean, I could barely hear it at all. Just pick a side, like pick Heroic and pick Outsiders, and try to get things going, get those chants going that you showed, you know, when the Brazilian teams were playing. But none of that. It was dead silent. So disappointing for me personally.
Yeah, and having been there and hearing it, I'll put it pretty bluntly that the Legends and Challengers stage was louder than the grand finals. like that's
Okay.
that's so disappointing. It was so disappointing, and
That's awful. Yeah.
Because I know who can actually hurt me in real life, I will actually take a battle with the right person here, and it's Gaules. Like, I'm going to take that battle as opposed to the audience, because I think the audience was responding to the stimulus that they were receiving in both different arenas. Like the arena for the grand finals had a caster, in air quotes, that wasn't actually hyping you up at all. Like I said this on the Talking Counter podcast, and I just like I'll reiterate that the way it sounded in the arena when Gaules is casting is like Fame will get one of the sickest clutches or whatever, and the way Gaules puts it is like, Fame, it's like, are you gonna die soon? Like, do you even want to be here? Because if you give any other caster,
and you think the crowd was just following like his cues, basically, like they were the level he was putting them at. Sound like, by the way, I mean, just that whole story of like, there's the other weird thing that people don't know. That Maus Cloud9 match is also sort of tainted by that story that like Gaules just decided like, oh, it's time for Maus to win. So fans, like, we're all going to go back inside and support Maus now. Like, what? Like, that story's mental in itself. Like, but it makes it sound like this guy was just at the Pied Piper, mate. Everyone's just doing whatever he says at this event and just following him around, whatever he calls, just as the player, right?
Yeah, I would argue. Look, I'm not trying to be. The crowd was amazing for the Brazilian matches. Don't get me wrong; it was probably one of the best crowds that we've seen in a lot of ways. But it has to be across the board. But I would also argue that, like, even when I've been in green rooms, I've been more exciting. There's no caster there to, hype you up. Sometimes you can't even hear the caster because it's too low on the volume. So you can get involved into a match. You can get excited for big plays if you understand how Counter-Strike works. Which I'm not saying this crowd didn't. Of course they did. They just weren't paying attention. I think they were just there and they didn't care about the teams. So because they didn't care about the teams, as a result, we didn't get a crowd that was invested in the match. That's it.
Yeah, I would also say as well, by the way, one thing I found really frustrating about this whole event and the entire discourse around the crowd was I noticed a lot of this. It always makes me feel like esports has become politics now, because you never even get to drill down to the real topic. You're just stuck on some abstract outside topic that someone else wants to talk about. So basically, in the same way as if you had a topic like, what about this female league in esports? It doesn't ever become, what about this female league in this esport? It becomes like, should women be able to, like, what are you talking about? That's not even the topic. That's just some shit you want to talk about. So similarly, right, the thing I found so frustrating about the discourse is people acted like we just invented crowds this year or something. Like every other major, Mauisnake never had a crowd. They were just in an empty arena. And suddenly a Brazilian came with a drum and, oh my God, he's like Albert Einstein. Holy shit, he split the atom. And so the reason I can't handle this is because you were at a major, Maui, called PGL Antwerp. You know the best thing about that, fans? Antwerp's in Belgium. Belgium's never had an elite Counter-Strike team. They had Scream in existence, that's it. And Nevera, maybe. That's it. In all of Counter-Strike. So why was that venue fucking rocking? I'll tell you why. Go and look this up. This detail completely pops the balloon, by the way, that we have to have events in Brazil because the crowd's awesome. You'll know this detail, Mauisnake. Do you remember during the playoffs of PGL Antwerp when those massive fan groups of like G2, the G2 Army, the Vitality, whatever they call it, fucking Hornets or some shit. I can't remember what they call it. Yeah,
Hornets.
There's even a third one, like Big or something. I can't remember the other one.
Roaring Bears. Yep.
Do you remember when these guys were going mad during the playoffs of PGL Antwerp, mate, Maui? Do you remember in the crowd?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the detail amazing. People are going to not realise. None of those fucking teams were in the playoffs. Those teams all got eliminated in the previous Swiss system. But the ultras for those teams, I don't even like ultras, mate. I despise the concept of fandoms. But fair play, they had tickets, so they went to the event anyway, because obviously they thought they were going to be in the playoffs. I get it. And just because their team wasn't there, they weren't like, oh, well, fuck it, you know what? Just boo everyone who isn't our team. No, the other way around. You would have thought, that's why I asked the question that way to Mauisnake, to trick you all. You would have thought their team was playing in those matches. You wouldn't know it was like Spirit versus fucking FaZe. You would think Vitality was playing because all their crowds there cheering. If people don't know, by the way, way, those ultras of teams that were already eliminated were the ones standing outside like FaZe's fucking hotel room going like, Carrigan, like, you know, like a day before the final, whatever. Like, again, this is stuff I'm not even a fan of, but fair play, that's real passion. That's someone who loves CSGO. If you only love, like, specifically only Brazilian players, look, that's fine. You can be a fan and do that too. There's space for you in esports, but surely there's some people at the event who were there for CSGO as well. Like, that's one thing I'll never get. Look, if I was Brazilian, yeah, obviously I'd want Fury to beat Na'Vi, but I wouldn't just go like, what's this fame and flit? They look shit if you ask me. Like, I'd be, look at your eyes, it's fucking amazing. What are you not enjoying? How could you not enjoy watching Heroic play, by the way, if you're some Brazilian fan? Like, what are you talking about? Like, flashy fucking calls, crazy outplays, like, everything you'd want to love's there. So that's the only angle I thought was a bit whack, was like, people overpraised the good parts of the crowd, and then they ignored that actually, like, you don't have to have most of the downsides. Like, here's what's weird. To me, it actually infers the opposite conclusion of this event. Everyone else's conclusion is, well, because the Brazilian crowd is so insane, we better have all the events in Brazil. My perception was, just get like fucking 2,000 of those guys and ship them over to another event, and then we can have all the great fan bases. And there's perfect. What's the problem? Haven't we fixed the issue, you know? Because I don't know. The problem I have is this. It was implied by the setup of having Gowles and him having all this command over the stream and leading. It's almost implied like you need him to sort of corral these people, corral these people and tell them what to do or whatever. Like, I don't know if that's even true. I feel like if you took him away, maybe it'll just be a normal event and we can have a normal crowd aspect. But even if it's true, like, that whole thing just feels so fucking unnecessary to me. I get why ESL might love. By the way, Mauisnake, one thing I'll always say as well is, to be fair, as the person at home, you're never actually getting the vibe of the arena because you're not there. You don't feel the like fucking the vibration of the stage and the booms and so you'll never get that angle. But the problem is, I'm not supposed to. I'm just on the stream, aren't I? Like, I'm supposed to enjoy what I see on the stream. That's the last part I'll say as well. Why are we still doing that in esports? Right? If over wasn't it like 1.5 million people were watching? Well, that means that there was only like 10,000 people in the arena. So why are we catering to 10,000 over the 1.5 million? You know what I mean? Like that. Those numbers are just a bit off to me. Any final points on this one?
Well, just that I guess some people are kind of like the one point of ambiguity that some people may have here is just like, is it louder in the stadium versus what we're hearing on the stream?
Right?
I think this. Yeah, but I think the stream was actually properly mic'd up. I think the audience was pretty much like, it was very, very accurate to what we were hearing. Like, in terms of, I didn't watch back every game on the stream because I was just watching it there in person. But I mean, in terms of the ones that I saw and people were reacting to the crowd, Legends Challenger stage was literally louder than what I heard for the grand finals. Like, that's just what it is. And that's kind of how a lot of people in the community reacted to the grand finals crowd or lack thereof. So it's not like people are misinterpreting this based off of their streaming viewing experience, because it's pretty accurate.
You know what? I'll even throw out there a random fucking idea, because it's actually a good idea, by the way. I would suggest you literally do this if you're an ESL, but they won't. Here's what I would do, right? Bearing in mind, look, I know theoretically how you organise this might be a bit dodgy because you'd have to sort of know they're not going to be in the tournament. But spoiler, Imperial aren't going to be in the playoffs of the next Brazilian Major either. So being as they aren't going to be there, what I would unironically do if I have this type of crowd set up is I would film some content before the playoffs where I just take the big Imperial figures, Thorin, for FNX, have them in Portuguese Brazilian, just basically explain which players they like out of the remaining teams and why the teams are good and what they're good at. I think just watching a little hype trailer like that, where like FNX tells you, like, you know what, I'm actually a fan of, I'll pick a random player, fucking exertion from Mouse, the way he's entering, like, dude, that might have an effect on the crowd. They might be like, oh, okay, oh, he co-signs him. Like, maybe that's even the angle, because we've got to do, because like I say, I don't believe these people aren't fans of Counter-Strike at all. That just seems implausible. Who could sit there even to watch their own team if you don't like it? But at the same time, there's some disconnect happening. Like, how are you not understanding what's brilliant about some of these players, you know? It can't just be Brazilian. That can't be the only angle to watch, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I'll take my ugly point on this, and then just because it does just feed into it does feed into mine, and that's just that for the way that I perceived it, and it just kind of factor into the crowd or the location and the fandoms, is that I think that like, and it's ugly because it's just like, it feels so reductive, but I think that most, if not all, majors should just be in Western or Central Europe now, because they've proven to have the best fan bases. Until there's a circuit that's big enough right now that can demonstrate, like with an IEM Dallas, or like, let's say like it is going to be IEM Dallas next year, but let's just say they tried like like Chicago again, or something in America, and then there's a fan base that proves it can handle having a major. I don't think that it's worthwhile to taint a major like this to have a crowd that just can be just like give you nothing. Like it would have been nice if they did a test run where it's like IEM Rio or IEM Sao Paulo first, and we kind of get to feel out, is this place worthy of having a major? And I almost feel like the bids for majors should be about the location now, just as much as it should be about the TO. Like I think most TOs have actually demonstrated at this point that they could probably handle an event of this scale, like the big ones like PGL, ESL, Blast. Like I think they all could do a great job at it. But I think that if they have to really carefully choose where these places are, because I don't know if there's anybody now anywhere that could actually hold a candle to what's going on in Western Central Europe in terms of CSGO fan bases. Because like what we saw with Brazil there is kind of, to me, a symptom of where I think a lot of fan bases are moving for traditional sports, where people are now becoming fans of individual players, and they're becoming very like devout fans of maybe their own team. But I also noticed like during these playoffs, people would cheer for Jame getting kills and Cadian getting kills, but they wouldn't give a shit if Tessus gets a 3K. Like, right. They just like nothing was, there was almost no reaction for Fame getting a double entry or clutch, and yet Jame getting a single kill somehow gets the whole crowd roaring. And that's just like when I think of NBA fan bases now, for example, I know that a lot of people just, it's like the joke is always like, I'm not a Heat fan, I'm a wherever he at fan. And that's where I think like a lot of people have shifted their perspective in terms of what they align with. So I think like Brazil is very much so proven to me that's what they think. They just care about individuals and their own teams, but they're not fans of the greater sport here, which I think that Western and Central Europe have. They've clearly demonstrated that they love Counter-Strike, and I think that's why just put majors there until other regions can show that they actually care about the game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I was thinking about that, even just going back and watching other majors and doing the comparison between this one. I kind of agree with you, Maui. It probably should stay there, at least because it's tried and tested, right? Every single crowd we've had has been phenomenal over in Western and Europe, and just in Europe in general. So I think that that's something that needs to happen. But I also agree that give North America a chance, get the IEMs here, see what kind of crowds we can build up here. Because I would love, I mean, I'm in Canada. Yeah. I would love it if a major was here, but I know full well that I don't think the audience would be present enough, right? So.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. By the way, in general, yeah, it's a slam dunk to just hold it in Western Europe. Like, everything's nailed. You know, the internet situation, all the teams can boot camp, everyone can get there. It's the main region you have to travel to anyway for Counter-Strike. So also, in theory, you sidetrack, like, visa problems and stuff. But I'd also throw in there, I think definitely North America shouldn't be abandoned completely. I know the Dallas one was a bad one. That was also very poorly scheduled in the actual, like, fucking 1 week after the major. Like, spoiler, if people don't know, there's a reason tournaments like that will always fail, and I'll explain it to you, because it's always been the way in CSGO. The reason why some of those teams drop out is because they don't yet know how they'll do at the major. So what they're doing is, look, if I completely don't even make top 8 at the major, like say like Vitality did here, well then I'm going to actually keep my fucking invite to an IEM Dallas. I'm going to go there and I'm going to try and get the bounce back tournament. But if I'm Na'Vi and I just lost the final, I'm not fucking, like, just forget it. Like, I can tell you right now, the second I lose, I'm not going to that tournament. It's over. So the problem is it'll always have a slightly gimped field a little bit. But I will say, if you just go and look historically, the best American crowds could easily make an awesome major. Like, I've always thought the most underrated venue, always, because I always enjoyed the ESL New York events, was when they had him in New York. Because here's what people probably wouldn't even think about as well. If you had a major in the New York area somewhere, any of those big stadiums, could be any sports stadium pretty much, people from like Toronto could just come down. It's right above it, mate. Like, there's so many areas in that. If people don't know, there's some mad stat that, like, the majority of the people in North America just live in like the East Coast, Maui. Like, the actual like rest of it's obviously like all farmland and fucking open areas, and it takes huge, like, you'd get loads of like foot traffic, in my opinion, if you had a major in the spot like that. So I think you could have a good enough crowd turn up. I don't have to abandon everything in North America, but as a general point, yeah, it's just safe to have it in Europe. You're just going to get the viewership, same time zone, everyone. It's kind of just like, we all know how it works. You can't really go wrong with it. I'm with you.
I mean, I wouldn't. The thing is, the problem with doing it in America now is that so much of the FPS fan base has shifted, or TAC FPS fan base has shifted over to Valorant, that I'm not 100% sold or confident in the fact that people are going to show up as much. I think that if you said the next major is in New York, I actually think it would probably do very well. But it's just like, I really personally, I just want a proof of concept first now because of what happened in Rio. Like that's just where I'm at with this whole situation.
Fair enough. Right, for my ugly point, my last one. Right, this one it's a bit like the Mauisnake, like the Farney one. It's like, look, one of the good things about being an analyst, the bad part is this, JRT, which is, you know, there's takes you have that are unpopular, but then moments come along where you're just going to have to talk about it and everyone's going to go, oh, he's doing that bloody thing again where he talks about that one player he doesn't like. But I'll tell you what, the good part is, because of how frustrating it is when there's no, like, everyone's like, oh, you're exaggerating it. And like, when it's just so on the money, it's like, right. Oh, it's like, I know Mauisnake, the second Cloud9 got eliminated, like, the table just rolls like 2 inches high, of course. So I'm going to say man, which is this, and I've said it this whole fucking career, so I'm going to say it again. Mate, I'm so bored of waiting for syrsoN at tier 1 on LAN to be what he is online in tier 2. Because go look at just watch Big even this year alone. You put him in an RMR, or the first phase of a major, and you put him against those tier 2 teams, those teams that say from like 8 to 20, oh, he'll farm them. He'll murk them all and look at the MVP of the whole tournament. But when you put him into the proper part of the tournament, like into like an IEM Cologne, a major, a Katowice, and he's in a playoff match against top teams, it's not even that he's bad. He's just an okay to above average AWPer. That's it. Whereas before that, like, that's actually to tie back into the opening when I joked about Big. That's one of the reasons I actually find them so frustrating, Mauisnake, because like tabseN does an amazing job as far as I can tell as an IGL. Some of even the younger players have sort of found their footing and are having some good performances. But the problem is, early on in tournaments in these bad opponents, syrsoN carries like he's simple, mate, and then when they get to the real matches, he's not going to be there. You know, like you can bet your house against this guy. You know you're going to win. It just bums me out, mate, because I feel like they could be so much better. And also, I'll throw this in there. The other reason I'm bringing it up now isn't just because of the major. It's because he's still in denial of it, bro. He's still doing those interviews they do where it's like, in these interviews, mate, you would think for real, I'm the architect of the simulation. I'm the one making syrsoN do that. And if I just stop pointing it out, it'll just be really awesome. Also, like, I'm just watching these matches, bro. I'm waiting for you to show me I'm wrong. What people don't know, Maui, is I love being proven wrong. Like when Jame actually became really good, then I'll give it up. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do it for 1 second till you do. So I just find it so frustrating because that's the one angle that there is no excuse for. Like, that guy is the primary AWPer on a team that will feed him AWPs whenever he wants. They're even a team that will fucking save correctly, by the way. Like, at the end of the day, you're the AWPer, bro. You have to shoot people. Like, there's a lot of other roles with nuance and how do you play this role. You're the AWPer. You just shoot people. That's all you do. You put the crosshair on them, press mouse 1. Did they die? You did your job. And unfortunately, he's not able to do his job to the degree. And like I say, it just triggers me when they're in denial. That also tells me this. Great, add another 2 or 3 years of this shit because they're not going to fucking address it, are they? They're in denial.
With syrsoN, it's pretty obvious now that he's kind of has the, like, it's been long enough. That's just how I'll put it, because I would, if I'm using the same criteria for what I did with Cloud9, like, it's been long enough for me. I've seen enough, and with syrsoN, I have to kind of give that. I have to put it in the same regard, because with the way that I characterized it at first, with like the Blastfall finals last year, syrsoN played pretty badly at it, and I thought that he was in a slump in his career, so that like people were like, "Oh, he's an onliner," and it's kind of like, this is one of the first.
That is clouding that whole narrative as well. And by the way, if you notice that whole topic, I should have put that as my ugly. That's ruining all these discussions. Like, again, you notice the discussion goes like this. If Cloud9 actually is good, well, then they were never online. It's like, what? Like, I saw this about Heroic. Like, how was everyone called them online? It's because they did nothing for like a year. What are you talking about? We're all waiting for them to win everything. No, I agree. That the onliner topic's not really my point on this one. It's just he doesn't do it online, you know.
Yeah, and it was to me with the fall finals last year and him performing badly, I just thought he was in a career slump, and he kind of was. If you even look at what he did online, leading into that event, he was playing pretty poorly. He played poorly at the event, and so people just kind of like conflated that narrative. But then with now what I've seen in the last year, it's kind of like a pressure thing with syrsoN. It feels like if he's in a big moment, like because actually with RMRs there's just less at stake, and it's not necessarily always. I'm not sure if I could say it's like stadium pressure, because it hasn't really always gotten to stadiums for syrsoN. Like sometimes he just crumbles under pressure in a studio environment too, and so it's just difficult for me to say it's like one exact thing, because it just feels like when it gets to a moment where if Big had the AWPer that they thought they had, they would be a top they would be a top 5 team.
Yeah,
and
I think they would.
I wouldn't, yeah. But it's just that he doesn't reach that height all the time. And it seems like it's in a like later stages of tournaments when this rears its ugly head. And with syrsoN in general, I don't think actually stylistically, I don't think he should be inconsistent. And when you watch him play, like there's nothing that really is saying like oh, the better teams are punishing him for this style of play. It is actually just sometimes mechanics that are failing him in these moments. So that's where it's very disappointing for him and Big in general, because they know that so much of their success hinges on him being a 1.2 rated opper. Like if they get that opper, they're gonna actually succeed. They're gonna probably make deep runs into tournaments.
By the way, did you see? Because I know a lot of people missed this joke. You know when that like update just dropped the other day, and Tabson just woke up like, "What the fuck?" Because remember, not only did they remove Dust 2, which has always been Big's map, but they took his AWP and just gave him half as many bullets in the gun. That must be like waking up. It's like, what next? Just ban Germany entirely from Counter-Strike? Like, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I know. Imagine being Tabson of all people waking up to that, and he was like, "Well, brilliant." That's
one of the worst things. That was one of the worst things for like French CS and German CS in the same day, actually.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
that's true.
With Big though, what's kind of unfortunate is like a greater ugly point for me I have is just that the fact that they are committing to the full German thing, and it's like I really like Big as an organization. I think they're like in terms of like management and like finding players, I think they've done a really good job at sifting through what is a region pretty devoid of talent actually. And so to even be like competing at the level that they are really speaks. It's a testament to how good Tabson is as a leader and how good the general management is in terms of finding people and raising them up into the like Crimbo is like an academy player. I mean, Keto serviceable, okay, whatever. I don't want to get into like their personnel necessarily, but like it's just that if they actually decided to go international again and they picked up Xantares, this team would be insane. And if they actually just like went out and got an international offer, this team would be so good. Like if you have this core of with Tabson, like basically if you just have IGL Tabson, I'm pretty sure this team, like you can have an incredibly strong team, but you are just hamstringing yourself by making sure by playing in a domestic or playing to a domestic audience or whatever you want to however you want to characterize that.
No, I agree with that a lot. And I think that was the problem in NA as well recently, like trying to keep all NA players on Complexity and Liquid. And now you see what happened to them. You know, you got Halser come into Complexity. I think Complexity still has problems, don't get me wrong, but I think he's really filled that hole well as an opper. And I agree that the same thing could happen here. Go international, as Xantares, you mentioned him, pick him up and replace syrsoN, who's been around for 2 years. I mean, he's had his time, he's had his chances. It's time to try and find someone else to fill that role as the opper. And again, I want to talk about Liquid. Yekindar added to that roster. So, you know, it's good to inject international talent. Look at any major sport, right? The NHL, for example, Canada hockey, I know, but you know, they're all international players. They're from all parts of the world to get the best players. You can't just focus on one region, even though you want to have that fan base. Be like, hey, it's a German team, but still, they're going to cheer for you regardless.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too, where it's just I don't know. Well, I'm just curious what they find to be the benefits here, I guess economically, with sticking domestically, because it probably makes things a little bit easier in terms of like getting everybody's visas and making sure that everybody can travel because they're all working with the same conditions. So that side of things, logistics, might be a little bit easier, because if you always have to get like some guy, especially like nowadays, if someone's from Russia, like it's just a nightmare for like higher level management to try to make sure that they can like travel. So but that's like one of those weird hurdles that I just don't think like could be an issue.
Yeah, well,
but it kind of is. Yeah.
I mean, phase, like, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
From every country, right? Or not every country, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.